In 2018, a radical political change took hold of Ethiopia. A popular uprising ended nearly 3 decades of rule dominated by the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, the TPLF, and brought to power a promising new Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed. Hailed for ending hostilities with neighbouring Eritrea, Abiy won the Nobel Peace Prize and raised hopes for national unity. But soon, his government was embroiled in a brutal civil war with the TPLF in the northern region of Tigray, leaving hundreds of thousands dead and millions displaced. My guest tonight is one of Ethiopia's most recognizable politicians. He was the TPLF's wartime spokesman who helped negotiate a peace deal in 2022. He became Tigray's transitional president before being ousted and joining the federal government he once condemned. Now he serves as Abiy's advisor for East African affairs, as a faltering peace deal fuels renewed hostilities and the threat of a wider conflict. I'm Mehdi Hasan, and tonight I go head-to-head with Getachew Reda on his new alliance with former arch-nemesis Abiy Ahmed, and whether Ethiopia and Eritrea are on the brink of another war. Tonight, I'll also be joined by our panel of experts. Sedale Lemma, journalist and editor of the Addis Standard newspaper, Kjetil Tronvoll, professor of peace and conflict studies at Oslo New University College, and Bisrat Lemessa, founder of the think tank Nexus Forum for Research and Dialogue. Getachew Reda, thank you for joining me on Head to Head tonight.
My pleasure.
You are currently serving as a government minister and an advisor to Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Abiy, as you know, is a controversial, some would say divisive political figure in your country. His critics say he's a tyrant, he's a grifter, he's dismembering Ethiopia. What's your response to people who make those criticisms of your boss?
Some, if not most of the things I have said all along the last couple of years, the last few years. So after having signed the Pretoria Agreement and submitting ourselves to the Constitution, because we have to put an end to the war, and after having served as interim president of Tigray for 2 years, we have come to a point where we have to work closely with the Prime Minister, whatever our political differences, whatever our characterizations.
You recognize that you're the person who called him a tyrant, a grifter, dismembering Ethiopia?
And more, yeah.
And more. You did go more.
Yeah.
You actually accused him of committing the crime of crimes, genocide, against your people, against the Tigrayans during the recent civil war. According to you, Abiy's forces even tried to assassinate you via drone strike, and they abducted and detained your sister. How does your sister feel about you working with the people who abducted her? Must make for an awkward family dinner.
My sister would feel the pain of having to go through the kinds of problems she had to face. But I think it would be fair to say that my sister is going to feel relieved that the kinds of sufferings she had to go through, people would not have to go through anymore.
You fell out with your old party, the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, the TPLF. They ousted you. And then you went and joined Abiy Ahmed. You didn't have to join the other side. You could have just said, you know what, I'm done with all of you.
Yeah, one of the things I knew I had to do was to make sure that my erstwhile friends, my comrades, who for one reason or another, of course that would include myself too, led to the kinds of suffering the people of Tigray had to suffer because of their failure in leadership, should not be allowed to continue to enjoy the kind of totalitarian control over the people of Tigray. So as long as there was a possibility, indeed a likelihood of working closely with the federal government, not to spite the people of Tigray, but to protect the interests of the people of Tigray.
But you're working with the federal government, hold on Getachew, you're working with the federal government that you spent years calling war criminals. You said Abiy Ahmed, and I'm quoting you, perfected genocide into an art form. Do you stand by those genocide accusations, or have you walked them back now that you work with?
Whatever the superlatives there, I know all kinds of crimes were committed in Tigray.
Did Abiy Ahmed carry out a genocide?
I will tell you this, as a lawyer, yeah. I cannot say who did this and that, but the crime was committed in Tigray.
You're a lawyer?
Yeah.
Were you not a lawyer in 2021 when you said Abiy Ahmed has carried out a genocidal campaign?
Yeah, I was a lawyer.
Were you not a lawyer when you said Abiy committed genocide on the people of Tigray?
I was a lawyer, and I was in the heat of a conflict that was claiming the lives of hundreds of thousands of people.
So was it a genocide or not?
I believe genocide has been committed in Tigray.
By Abiy Ahmed?
Well, I have to be responsible for my words now.
So you weren't responsible
and
before?
I am ready to stand by my position that genocide has been committed.
I'm confused. Just to clarify for the audience watching, you still believe it was a genocide,
yes,
but you're not willing to say he did the genocide?
Yes.
It was a genocide that just happened by itself?
No, there were so many actors involved.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is...
Was he one of them?
Well, the war on Tigray was led by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed himself.
So he led the genocide?
I mean, we don't have to be that specific.
We do.
He led the war.
That's why we invited you here, to find out your views.
He led the war.
He led the war.
So I will give him the opportunity to defend himself in public, in court.
Okay.
What I'm saying is all kinds of crimes.
You mentioned...
Crimes, ethnic cleansing, genocide were committed.
So you're right, there were well-documented war crimes committed by the federal government, by Eritrean troops,
yes,
by Amhara militias. But human rights organizations in the United Nations also documented massacres of hundreds of people, including civilians, by Tigrayan forces, by your side. At the time, you labeled those claims, quote, a figment of someone's imagination. You called it a staged drama. Can you now admit that you were lying at the time to cover up war crimes?
No, I wasn't lying.
By your forces?
I was making a statement defending our decisions that there was no systematic attack against civilians by the Tigrayan forces, but to the extent that there were incidents, we were ready to hold ourselves accountable to any international tribunal. So when I say...
You said at the time, these are just a figment of someone's imagination. There was no such thing as our forces going in every house and targeting civilians. They fought and our forces fought back. That sounds like a denial of war crimes.
You know, in the benefit of hindsight, I can see cases here and there where civilians were targeted.
Here and there?
Yes.
One man said he counted 55 corpses as he escaped from his town in northern Ethiopia. He stepped over bodies scattered in the streets. Another asserted he was rounded up with 20 men who were shot in front of him. Yet others claimed Tigrayan forces went door to door, killing men and teenage boys. That happened on your watch.
Well, to say that it happened under my watch, under circumstances, would be a bit of a stretch. But when I say that no decision, such a decision was made against civilians, I still stand by it because there was no decision to target civilians. But as long as there were off-grid officers here and there who have targeted civilians, I'd be more than glad to assume my fair share of responsibility.
To be fair, you recently exposed an internal TPLF investigation that accuses 231 of your former leaders and affiliates of crimes, including human trafficking, abductions, gold and weapon smuggling. But you waited to reveal it.
Honestly...
How do we know you weren't involved in these crimes?
Honestly, I wasn't involved in the crimes because...
Well, you exposed them.
Because I wasn't. But I knew...
That's not really a good defense. I wasn't involved in the crimes because I wasn't.
After having spent months as president of the interim administration, it came to my knowledge that these kinds of activities were quite mundane.
But you didn't reveal it. You waited until this year.
Because I didn't reveal it because we believed in the TPLF that maintaining a modicum of unity was far more important than addressing our internal problems. And that...
I mean, human trafficking is not an internal problem. It's a major crime.
When I first decided to bring those not just accusations, but also evidence to light, well, my responsibility was to make sure the people who were in the business of adjudicating these cases were informed. And it's not like I can go door to door and prosecute myself.
But you exposed 231 people.
But I did the exposing way ahead of my being ousted as interim president.
But you admitted earlier this year that you lied up until now. I tolerated this.
No, I tolerated.
You lied. You said you lied.
No, I didn't lie. I tolerated.
You said earlier this year, it is enough that I lied up to now and I tolerated up to now. Those are your words.
Well,
are you lying about having lied?
Whoever translated those things to you must have overstated their case.
What would you say to someone in this audience who says, you exposed 231 people in your party for committing crimes. Conveniently, none of the 231 were you.
Unfortunately for whoever was making those claims, I wasn't one of them. It's as simple as that.
Okay. The Pretoria Agreement, the peace deal that you negotiated, signed in 2022, that pledged justice for millions of people who suffered during the war in Tigray. It's been 3 years, and none of the key promises have been fulfilled. None of the major players have been held accountable for war crimes. In fact, many of them are still in positions of power. Last month, you met with Amhara official Demeke Zudu, who Human Rights Watch has said continued the ethnic cleansing in Western Tigray even after the ceasefire, including, quote, arbitrary detention, torture, forced deportations. How can Tigrayans possibly believe that you are working in their best interest when you're meeting one of the men who's responsible for them having lost their land?
Is that unheard of elsewhere? If you are interested in resolving this crisis, you have to deal with people who are in charge now. I believe the federal government needs to dismantle any Amhara administration in occupied areas in Western Tigray and other parts of Tigray that are still occupied by the Amhara. And if I have to make sure that the people have their opportunity to come back home, you have to work with the federal government and work with people.
This is the problem, Getachew. You seem to change your tune. You have to change your tune.
No, I have to swallow my pride.
Not just swallow your pride, you're changing your very view of the world. This is what you said a year ago.
No, I'm not
This is what you said.
Anyone.
This is what you said a year ago. It would be very foolhardy for us to expect internally displaced persons to enter when the very people who caused their displacement in the first place are still roaming the very streets we saw in the carnage. You're sitting down with those people.
This is one of the arguments we have with the federal government when I was head of the interim administration, is for that Amhara administration to be dismantled and for security to be taken care of by the federal government, along with traditional militia and police institutions that had been there before the war. And I haven't changed my position.
Okay.
Demeke Zudu should not be in the business of administering that area, but if I have to create the ground for the return of IDPs with the federal government and have to continue to work with people like him.
Many Tigrayans, you know this, see you as a traitor. Thousands of people in Tigray went to the battlefield and they died. They were killed in war based on your call to arms. You urged young Tigrayans to, quote, rise and deploy to battle in tens of thousands. What do you say to the people of Tigray today who were victims of the war and who now think you betrayed them by joining the architect of their suffering, Abiy Ahmed?
There are two things here. That Tigrayans had to come out en masse to defend themselves was the right thing to do. That I had to call on them to rise up to defend themselves was the right thing to do. But that as member of the leadership, we have failed them miserably. That I will carry to my grave is I am part of the blame. And the reason why I am trying to do what I am doing right now is to make sure that not only I atone for the kinds of mistakes we have done, but also I have to do everything in my power to make sure that that sort of miscalculation will never happen again. And the thousands of youngsters who paid their lives, that could have been avoided if we were insightful enough as the leaders. Doesn't happen again.
All right, let's go to our panel of experts here. I'm joined by Sidale Lema, editor of the Addis Standard newspaper. Were you surprised, Sidale, to see Getachew join Abiy Ahmed's administration? What does that mean for the victims of the war? He says he feels like he's atoning for things.
I think it's one of the greatest tragedies, Getachew. This is not just a moral collapse. This risks erasing morality altogether. You agree that a genocide took place. And it's not just a figment of imagination. You mentioned about, I would call it pragmatism or working from within to solve this problem. And I think your supporters also say the same thing. What have you done so far? Have the people of Tigray been compensated, redress, justice? Have the federal government tried to incorporate, after you even came to it, incorporate Tigray into the federation? The answer is no.
Okay.
Is there any justice to the victims? The answer is no.
Bisrat Lamessa is an independent researcher, runs the think tank Nexus Forum for Research and Dialogue. Do you agree with Sidale's point that he may have joined the government, he may be trying to do good, but where are the results? What did you make when you heard the big news that he had come and joined Abiy Ahmed?
I don't agree with Sidale, unfortunately. Well, one thing, it hasn't been designated as a genocide. This is a very sensitive concept that we shouldn't casually throw around. But when it comes to Getachew, I believe this is a very pragmatic move that has positive dividends at multiple levels. This is not a simple alliance between two individuals. people are rejecting TPLF's 50-year autocratic monopoly over the people's political, civil, and economic lives. They want a new political dispensation which is democratic, inclusive, open, and diverse. And I believe such a move is an ideal opportunity to create an alternative space that will enable Tigray to renew itself from within.
So this makes the case for why you should be in there. Deal with Sadale's point that what have you actually achieved being in government? What justice have you got?
I'll have to first respond to what Sadale. I mean, you know, I'm not here to pontificate about moral. I'm one of those leaders who should be blamed for anything and everything that has gone wrong. But I also know that I'm one of the leaders who realized that going ahead with the kind of destructive approach we've been following is not going to be in the best interest of the people of Tigray.
What have you achieved by making this big step?
Oh, you mean since joining? I had long since joined Abiy Ahmed. I was the interim president appointed by Abiy Ahmed. And why is it that all of a sudden now I was ousted from Tigray, as it were, and then I come to Addis and I have to deal with Tigray issues. I still have to protect the best interest of the people of Tigray in any way I can. And then I have the opportunity to work with the Prime Minister, not as a policymaker, but as an advisor who would give his 5 cents.
Let's bring in Shetil Tronville, is a professor of peace and conflict studies at Oslo New University College. He specializes in Ethiopian and Eritrean affairs. Getachew says he wants accountability and justice for Tigray and the victims of the civil war. Is the federal government that he's part of, that he's a minister in, is it working towards that aim? Is it doing enough?
Well, we don't have any evidence for that as of now. They have put in place a so-called transitional justice mechanism to address the mass atrocities taking place in Tigray during the war. But that framework of so-called transitional justice is more aimed at not disclosing and not placing accountability on individuals, but diverting attention to other aspects of Ethiopia's long troubled history of human rights abuse. So as of today, we have no evidence whatsoever that the government is providing accountability for the mass atrocities.
No evidence whatsoever. That's pretty damning.
I agree with Shetil. Nothing of the sort has happened. Well, the Defense Ministry has taken measures against some off-grade low-level officials. And as long as I am able to convince or try to impress on the powers that be in Addis Ababa that none of the adventures 5 years ago are going to pay dividends, and then I will use that opportunity.
In 2019, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed won the Nobel Peace Prize for ending decades of hostilities with neighbouring Eritrea. Abiy then partnered with Eritrea to fight against Tigray in the civil war. Today, however, there are rumblings of a possible new conflict between these two countries. There are reports of Ethiopian tanks and artilleries moving towards the border. Both governments are accusing each other of trying to provoke a conflict. Is Ethiopia on the precipice of another war with Eritrea?
I wouldn't put it that way. I mean, the whole rhetoric about Ethiopia's wanting to have access to the Red Sea is often conflated with the idea of ownership of real estate, coal, asset, or whatever. As far as I'm concerned, there is no credible argument whatsoever to try and go against the sovereignty of Eritrea.
Are you saying that the claims of the Ethiopian government, led by Abiy, saying we want access to that Red Sea port that's in Eritrea, you're saying that won't lead to war?
No. What I'm saying is I don't expect that to lead to war, at least not in the foreseeable future, as far as I'm concerned.
Prime Minister Abiy, on the one hand, has said he wants peace. He says he wants to avoid conflict. On the other, he's vowed to, quote, correct this historic error of the seaport and said, quote, I am 1,000,000% sure Ethiopia will not remain landlocked. The Ethiopian military said recently that it will not hesitate to make any sacrifice to secure access to the sea. How are those not threats?
So I have reason to believe that President Isaias and Prime Minister Abiy will find it in their hearts to find a way to resolve, to defuse the crisis. Believe me. That's what I believe in.
When you say believe me, this show is not about belief. It's about facts. It's about evidence.
I will tell
Do you have any evidence?
I'll tell you about the facts.
Do you have any evidence that you're ruling? You're saying there's no conflict. Everyone who's worried about conflict right now.
I'll give you the facts. Okay. You know, I recently traveled to Afar region, all the way to Bure.
Yeah.
And I saw concrete asphalt being built by the Ethiopian government. Yeah. Obviously, the Eritrean government also is building their side of the asphalt. So it must have been a recent fallout between the two sides. So if they have made that investment sincerely, and then I cannot rule out the two parties coming together and
people worry about the
relation.
rhetoric. Many would say this is not about a port. This is about expansionism by the Ethiopian government. Some have said that Abiy is, quote, obsessed with Ethiopia's imperial past, that he wants to march into Eritrea's capital and declare the Red Sea as his border. He wants to be celebrated as the leader who restored Ethiopia's greatness. What do you say to people who say that?
Well, I said as much in the past myself. Now the question is...
Those are all your quotes. You said he was obsessed with Ethiopia's imperial past. You said he wants to restore Ethiopia's greatness. Is that not what you believe anymore?
Well, no. I mean, I don't have any problem with Abiy wanting to restore Ethiopia's greatness, whatever that greatness is. My issue is that sort of claim is not likely to lead to the kind of conflict people fear is going to happen anytime soon.
At the time, when you said it in 2021, you said it would lead to conflict.
I said it in I didn't even say it will lead to conflict. That it will talk, I said he will take over Asmara.
I understand that's what you're saying. My question is, does that mean you no longer think he's an imperialist warmonger?
No. I think at this point in time he cares more about his image, that he's trying to make differences in domestic politics and all that. So I don't think he will risk the kind of expansionist approach that many people impute to him. But
many people being you.
Yeah. Well, in fact, I went beyond that he would take over Asmara.
Okay.
He hasn't taken over Asmara.
So are you saying you were wrong about it?
No, he hasn't taken over Asmara.
If war does break out with Eritrea, should Abiy give his Nobel Peace Prize back?
Well, he could.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Let's go back to our panel. Sadale Lema, what do you make of the tensions between Eritrea and Ethiopia? Getachew says, believe me, he's got some insider information. They're not going to go to war. Do you buy that? Are you worried?
I am worried, and I think a lot of people are worried. I think the fundamental problem of the tension today is the alliances that President Isaias Afwerki and Abiy Ahmed created a war pact. And when the Pretoria Agreement was signed, it collapsed. Now the two are looking at each other. But the problem is that I think the Prime Minister made it for the first time a few weeks ago when he said that what they want is a navy base. And it's not just the port access. And this ups the ante.
I want to bring in Sheetal Tronville. You study conflicts. You know both these countries very well. Do you think war is inevitable? Do you think it's avoidable? Do you buy the, should we call it complacency or positivity from Getachew here?
No, I think the war is coming, and it's coming pretty soon. Ethiopia is now posturing and ticking off every box of claiming a right to self-defense, accusing Eritrea of destabilizing Ethiopia, accusing Eritrea of funding and arming militias, the Fano-Amhara militias, accusing Eritrea to collude with the Tigrayan government or the TPLF in Tigray. The Minister of Foreign Affairs in Ethiopia submitted a letter to the Secretary General of UN, ticking off all of these issues, saying that we will be patient, we want peace, but we are not patient for too long.
Sheetal says war is coming, and he's laying out that the Ethiopian government seems to be making the case for it.
While I agree with his analysis, what I'm saying is war is not necessarily inevitable. The reason why I don't believe war is inevitable is because the region has more than ample experience of turning things around and making the best of bodies out of erstwhile enemies.
Excuse me, Mr. Getachew, the region has also ample experience with war after war after war after war, relapsing to war more than creating sustainable peace.
Let me bring in Bisrat Lemessa. Let me ask you, Bisrat, when Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed says, we will correct the historic error, the mistake made 30 years ago will be corrected tomorrow. It is an existential issue. That sounds like a guy getting ready to do war.
The government and also the Ethiopian people at large resent a flawed political process through which Ethiopia lost its coastal territories. So the Ethiopian government wants to sit down and discuss that with the Eritrean regime. Now, this is the problem. Eritrea's aggression is not necessarily linked to Ethiopia's quest for access to the sea. The Eritrean government hasn't managed to capitalize on Eritrea's independence and create a functional state that is reliable, predictable, and has institutions. In 2018, the Ethiopian government tried to formalize the expression of interest in friendship into institutionalized agreements.
Well, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia in 2018 recognized the borders.
It was just the borders per the Algiers Agreement, but it wasn't necessarily about making corrections to the historical strategic blunder.
We are going to take a short break. In part 2, we will be back with Getachew Reda, with our panel of experts, talking about the Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, his record, his legacy, his human rights issues, and Getachew's relationship with him. Don't go away. Welcome back to Head to Head on Al Jazeera. My guest tonight is Government Minister and an advisor to Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, Getachew Reda. Getachew, in part 1, we talked about the prospects for war. We talked about your own record in terms of moving over from the TPLF to the current government. Let's talk about the current government. Let's talk about Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, a man who at first was heralded as a reformer. He got a peace prize. He was seen as a fresh leader after decades of oppressive TPLF-dominated rule, your former party. Today, though, under his rule, we're witnessing an erosion of human rights, government clashes with militia groups in Amhara, Oromia, the ongoing killing of civilians, the jailing of journalists and opposition figures. Ethiopia's economy is struggling, poverty is on the rise. Now, as you said in part 1, you support the Prime Minister in terms of trying to end conflict, especially abroad. But surely on the domestic front, you could agree that it's not going so well for Abiy Ahmed on the domestic front.
Bulldozing your way out of every crisis is not going to work. So to the extent that I have a role to play, it's as much about addressing the Tigray crisis as trying to give my piece of advice to the Prime Minister. That
what about all the opposition politicians and journalists who are being locked up? You used to be against that back in the day.
Well, I'm still against any such move against opposition leaders.
Well, you were an advisor to the Prime Minister. Have you asked him to release some of these journalists and politicians?
Well, you give me a list and I definitely will do that, believe me.
I'll read to you from the Committee to Protect Journalists from August.
Okay.
Ethiopian journalists were abducted by masked men. 2 others were detained. We are alarmed by the abduction of Ethiopian newspaper editor Jonas Amari, the arbitrary detention of journalist Qadr Mohammed Ismail, the incommunicado detention of radio host Abdul Samed Mohammed. I can keep going. Should they be released?
They should be released, yeah.
Well, I mean, telling me that's great, but I'm not the Prime Minister of Ethiopia.
Well, I don't exactly know what the allegations against them are.
Why don't you find out?
I once was an information minister. I had been dealing with such kinds of issues. And I don't believe that detaining journalists for their professional work is acceptable.
What about the federal MP Christian Tadale, who was taken last year, detained? He's now very ill in prison. His family are very worried about him. He's a member of parliament.
He should have his day in court. Anyone who is accused of any crime should have their day in court, and they should be treated decently.
You have all these tensions in Ethiopia, and some people would say undermines Prime Minister Abiy's very grand vision for unity, which is outlined in a series of books called Medema, which means coming together. Yeah. And Medema in part advocates for ending Ethiopia's division into ethnic states and pushing for a united country. It's very idealistic, very grand. A lot of people have criticized that pan-Ethiopian ideology. Some people call it an assimilation agenda that's been the source of the problems for Ethiopia. Other people call it bullshit. Some people say Abiy has no idea what Medema is. What do you say to those critics?
Well, but the only Medema book I've read is the most recent one. So I gave my assessment of what the book stands for.
You called it a noble document.
Did I call it a noble document?
Yeah.
I said it has grand ideas, and the way to put them on the ground, to implement them, would require a serious policy debate. I wasn't endorsing any policy. I was simply saying that he has a vision.
Just to be clear, the people who said it was bullshit and an assimilation agenda that's the source of the problems, and who said Abiy doesn't have any clue about Medema, was, drumroll, you.
Well, Medema, I mean, I'm talking about the only book I have read, and I commented on it.
So why did you say in 2020 Abiy came up with Medema? He doesn't have any clue about Medema.
No, he had a clue about Medema, but I didn't subscribe to what he said in the Medema back then. And
but you do now?
I'm not even sure.
Do you still think it's bullshit?
No, I probably have matured enough the last 5 years to avoid the kinds of sweeping characterizations that people make, and I once made.
You're a reformed man.
I wouldn't say reformed, but I have grown up.
You've grown. Just to be clear, when I interviewed you in 2016 for Al Jazeera, you were a government minister, as you mentioned, spokesperson for the TPLF.
For the government, for the federal government.
But you were also in the TPLF.
Yes.
Now you're with the Abiy government, you're anti the TPLF. Next year, who knows where you'll be? People will say, how can we take you seriously?
Well, you should
come out, you hop.
Because I will tell you this. Once what I contribute, whatever I can contribute to the betterment of the lives of the people of Tigray, if I can do whatever I can to make sure this misguided leadership, this misguided leadership doesn't end up creating the same miscalculation that landed the people of Tigray in the situation,
goal.
and then I'll be gone.
But gone where? To another party?
No, probably to academia, to writing books and all that. Believe me, I'm not interested in the corridors of power anymore. Even now,
you're not interested in political power, even though you've been in politics for 20-odd years.
Even now, I don't clear my words with the Prime Minister. I don't clear my words with anyone, and I do what I do, and I say it because I think it's in the best interest of the people.
On that note, critics of Abiy say he has a messiah complex. He's once said that he was divinely ordained to rule, that his mother had a vision that he would be the seventh king to unite Ethiopia. An advisor of his said Abiy believes he's God anointed. Has he said that to you? Does he tell you that he's the king?
No, he said it in public. He said it in Parliament, right?
Did he say it to you?
No, he didn't say it to me. As a matter of fact, he was a very close friend even before he got elected. But
who was
what he said,
friend?
Abiy was my close friend.
You hated him. You said he was a genocidal warmonger, imperialist.
Yeah, but
weird friends you have.
That doesn't change the fact that we're friends.
The fact that he's a genocidal warmonger didn't change the fact that you were friends.
No. I'm stating the fact.
Before the genocide, you mean you were friends?
Yes.
And after the genocide, you're friends. Just during the genocide, you weren't friends.
We were fighting each other. We're at each other's
yes, and thousands of people.
No. I mean, let's not belittle the whole idea of this genocide, whatever. What I'm saying
not the one belittling you. You're the one who said you used to be friends with the guy you accused of being
No. He didn't tell me personally that he was a messiah or anything.
Do you believe he's a messiah?
He said his mother told him he would once be a king.
Do you believe Abiy was chosen by God to rule Ethiopia?
I don't.
You don't?
I don't.
Have you told him that?
I don't have to tell him.
I mean, you kind of do. He thinks he is, and you're his advisor. Advisors normally give advice.
I don't believe God has a specific choices or whatever to lead. As long as you think you can lead the country and you prove your mettle, you can be leader.
Has he proved his mettle?
He has yet to prove his mettle.
He's been in office for several years. He's still yet to prove his mettle.
This is my position. Okay. I'm not in the business of settling accounts on his behalf. I'm not in the business of.
And if he watches this interview and he sees his advisor saying he's yet to prove his mettle and he may be guilty of genocide, do you think he'll fire you or keep you on?
Honestly, I'm not. I don't really care what happens as a result of that. But I have reason to believe that saying those things in public does not necessarily lead to the kinds of consequences. But like I said, I don't care what happens.
I live in a country where the leader thinks he's also a king. So let's go to our panel. Sidale Lema is editor of the Addis Standard newspaper. Abiy came to power as a reformer, self-styled. You wrote a New York Times editorial a few years ago titled, "He promised peace, then he tore the country apart." What do you think his legacy is as a prime minister?
Exactly what you just said now. Look, we might be discussing about the crisis in the Tigray region, but Ethiopia began to get engulfed in wars soon after he came in Oromia regional state, his own turf, right? And in Amhara region today, in Oromia, the wars continued there. There's no indication whatsoever to end them through political settlement. We have seen assassinations of the likes of Hajalu Hundessa, the likes of Bate Orgesa, men who should not have been assassinated, under the watches of the same prime minister. Naturally, wars tear societies apart. And when you also oversee the assassination of prominent figures and refuse for any independent investigation, for the truth to come out, you are sowing the seeds of bitterness within your own communities. What the Tigray war did to us is finish that work. We are not anywhere close to coming together. Every fabric of Ethiopian society was torn apart, and there is no turning back.
We're being torn apart, no signs of coming together. Do you agree with that?
What the Tigray conflict has done is, like he said, create a sense that people maybe after all don't see any hope. So what we have to do is to make sure that whatever chance there is to salvage a semblance of unity needs to be put together. And whatever effort I'm going to make, first and foremost, is about protecting the interests of the people of Tigray, and of course to ensure that Ethiopia doesn't continue to slide. It takes engagement with whoever is in charge, Prime Minister Abiy included, to arrest this development, not to just complain about.
This government has shut down various initiatives to get justice and accountability. That's a fact.
How are we gliding around this if we ever need to come together as a society?
No. What I'm saying is, in the context of Pretoria, for example, whether transitional justice and everything, transitional justice is not just about Tigray, it's about the entire country. It needs to be fully implemented. That's my position. I know that the challenge, but we have to engage the federal government anyway.
There are other challenges related to that. Bisrat Lemesse is an independent researcher, runs the think tank Nexus Forum for Research and Dialogue. Bisrat, what do you say to people who worry there won't be free and fair elections in Ethiopia next year, that Abiy is an autocrat? What is your response to them?
Well, I don't think that's a fair assessment. Trying to put everything on Abiy as the architect of division in Ethiopia is either it's a cynical attitude or it's failing to understand Ethiopia's complex history, tensions around ethnicity, religion, ideology, and throughout its history, it's been accumulating problems after problems after problems. In 2018, the Prime Minister ascended to power because everybody, including TPLF leaders, recognized that the country was inching towards implosion, and change was necessary. But let me tell you one thing. People usually talk about the euphoria that happened in 2018, but that hid two divergent political forces. One that blamed TPLF for its monopolistic approach and sought more ethnic autonomy. They expected that from the Prime Minister. The other one said ethnic federalism is the root of all our problems, and he's supposed to shred the constitution, dismantle the structure, and bring in something new. Now, this is the Ethiopia that the Prime Minister inherited, but that is where the transitional justice framework comes in. Let's confront our past, reconcile, move on. That is where the National Dialogue Initiative comes. Let's come together and do a bottom-up approach.
Let me bring in Kjetil Tronvoll, is Professor of Peace and Conflict Studies at Oslo New University College. Kjetil, there's this phrase that's now doing the rounds, mega, make Ethiopia great again. Abiy's been associated with this phrase. Some people think mega is just a way for Abiy to, push his own agenda, big up himself, self-aggrandizement. What do you make of what he's trying to do with Ethiopia? Is he trying to restore some form of greatness, bigger boundaries, bigger borders? What is his goal in your view?
I think all of the above is his goal. Will he succeed? Probably not, because he's repeating the mistakes as done by earlier emperors and governments in Ethiopia. Every time a government is trying to centralize power in Ethiopia, it creates counterforces from the regional states or from the ethnic groups, call it whatever you want. And in addition to the centralization process, Abiy is also trying to impose all-embracing Ethiopian identity, using a language and a rhetoric harking back to an imperial time, which is very provocative for the gentleman sitting next to you, and that ideology from the Tigray People's Liberation Front, from the Orobo Liberation Front, and from others. So he's trying to create something which has failed 2 times before, and I think it will fail again.
Is mega provocative to you? Is this idea of of subsuming ethnic identities into one pan-Ethiopian ideology, does that worry you? You used to call him imperial, as we've discussed tonight.
No, that's such a project is not going to work, whether it comes from Abiy, from TPLF, or from whoever it is who promotes such agenda. It's not going to work because...
You're not worried about the centralization of power that Kjetil identified?
No, but I haven't abandoned any of the misgivings that I had when the centralization of power led to the kinds of conflicts. What I am saying is whatever is going to work in Ethiopia should take into account the diversity of the country. We had this assessment back in EPRDF days before Abiy came to power, that the problem was a question of striking a perfect balance between maintaining an Ethiopian nationality while at the same time maintaining the level of autonomy that ethnic groups or nations and nationalities should have. And unless you maintain that perfect balance, then any project is doomed to fail. That's my position. And that is the kind of advice I would give him anyway.
Okay, let's go to our very patient audience here in the Conway Hall in London. If you have questions for Getachew, please do raise your hands and I will come to you. We'll go to the lady here at the front.
Domestic accountability has never happened in modern history in Ethiopia. And there were several international initiatives that were started and then ended because of the federal government's involvement internationally. The AU is one example, the United Nations was another. And then this was replaced by the domestic mechanism that we still haven't seen any prospects from. And so I'm asking, as someone who was working at Amnesty International during the conflict, looking and working with the victims of that conflict was one of the most heartbreaking experiences of my life. You were there in person. What do you say to those people now in terms of the future of their justice accountability prospects?
Okay. Well, I would say the very nature of the war, especially when it comes to Tigray, is such that just domestic responsibility alone would not be able to take care of the issue of justice and accountability. There were all sorts of assortment of groups that were involved in the crimes. And to just assume that transitional justice, that only takes into account, assuming that it's going to be implemented, will take care of all the crimes.
There was an African Union Commission, there was a UN Commission. The Ethiopian government lobbied to have them shut down.
Well, I cannot speak for the government because this happened while I was arguing against it. What I'm saying is there needs to be
You would like to see those commissions still around?
And there needs to be an international component to the quest for justice.
There was. And the guy you work for lobbied to shut it down.
Okay, I'm not going to cry over spilt milk. What I'm saying is, now that you don't have those institutions, we need to have an international component.
So what are you calling for? What is that? Are you calling for an international tribunal, international investigation? What are you calling
for? I don't have the specifics, but yeah, some kind of tribunal. Yeah, that involves, of course, the involvement of that involves international actors.
Because is that your personal view or is that the government's view?
That's my view. I am an advisor. I'm not a policymaker. This is the same advice I would proffer to the government. Because I'm saying there needs to be an international component because the crimes involved international actors as well.
Got shut down by the government you work for. Let's go back to the audience. I said I'd go to that gentleman at the back.
So Donald Trump claims that he solved 8 wars, and one of them was between Ethiopia and Egypt. He said that he ended it, but there really was no war between Ethiopia and Egypt. So he's lying, right?
I have reached that point of time when I don't have to make more enemies. So I'm not going to say anything about President Trump. But to the extent that he has solved any war between Ethiopia and Egypt, I would say it must be a war of words. Even that is far from addressed as far as I am concerned.
But there was no war between Egypt and
There was no war, but
he goes around saying it's one of the 8 wars he solved.
The war of words has been going on for quite some time.
So Donald Trump solved a war of words between Ethiopia and Egypt.
Stick to your characterization.
Those are your words. I'm just summarizing.
Yes, he hasn't solved a war between Egypt and Ethiopia.
Thank you very much.
Because there was none.
That was good. We're in agreement. Finally tonight, we're in agreement. Gentleman in the second row.
My question is, moving forward, the Ethiopian government is hoping to hold the next election, I think in next June, and I understand you have a new party called Simrat, which is Tigray Liberal Democratic. Could you please explain what is being prepared in terms of you taking part in the election? And thank you.
This party was established simply to make sure that the movement for change in Tigray doesn't fizzle out because of the reckless leadership of the TPLF or whatever is left of it. So we are trying to fill the gap, but we also know that we cannot repeat what the TPLF leadership, myself included, had been doing, which is, of course, totalitarian control of the Tigrayan public.
Lady in the glasses. Yes, do you want to stand up?
Thanks very much. On your watch as regional president, your new allies were responsible for more deportations, for more killings, for more massacres. You know that your new allies in Western Tigray, who are still administering that area, have been accused of ethnic cleansing on a massive scale. you know that they are still responsible for brutalizing that population, including, keeping women in sexual slavery. So I want to know what it is that you, with this miraculous power that you're now going to wield, are going to do to keep those people safe, especially in the absence of any prospect of justice or accountability.
Well,
thank you.
You should know better that holding the people, the IDPs hostage, is a tactic that has been employed by the leadership in Magala, in Tigray. And well, while I had issues with federal government on some of the issues they were raising, we still were in agreement as interim Tigray administration with the federal government to go through that process of repatriation of IDPs. But the TPLF leadership, minus me, decided that without their former administration going to the picture, that they would not accept that. This is pretty much what happened.
There were 3 times of redisplacement, 3 times of attempts for safe passage of the displaced individuals, and all 3 times they were redisplaced again. We were there reporting it.
No,
it's not the lack of...
I know where you're coming from. What I'm saying is we had a series of negotiations with the federal government. We had decided on a number of steps to be taken care of, which not just me, but also the very people who were in charge of the implementation of the process were in perfect agreement with. But unfortunately, the political leadership would have none of it.
Let's go to the state who's been waiting patiently in the red.
Splinter groups in Araya and Afar are undermining the peace and recovery in Tigray and distracting from justice and accountability in Tigray. Will you advise the PM to stop arming the splinter groups and the insurgents and focus his attention on implementing COHA, since that's been neglected for all these years?
The focus should be, both for the Prime Minister and for all of us involved, to the fullest possible implementation of the cessation of hostilities agreement. Well, I would beg to differ when it comes to your assessment of what's happening in Afar. I'm totally against any armed move against anyone, including the very people who ousted me, to use his word. But
Getachew, you're accused of supporting these splinter groups as well.
No, I'm not.
The Tigrayan Peace Forces, are you involved with that?
The Tigrayan Peace Force, my understanding of the Tigrayan Peace Force is a resistance against the kind of totalitarian moves by the TPLF leadership, and they are there to make sure that they don't have the wherewithal to launch another.
So you are involved with that group?
No, I'm not involved in that group. Whoever does that, I would support only if they are focused on making sure that TPLF leaders are not going to be used by the Eritrean regime to further destabilize the country. Because at the end of the day, what the Eritreans are calculating is to bring the conflict into Tigray and other parts of Ethiopia, so that whatever ambitions Abiy might have, they could get away scot-free.
Getachew, next year Ethiopia will hold a federal election. You've started this new party, as we heard earlier, Simret. You've been in Ethiopian politics for almost 2 decades. Like a lot of other Ethiopian politicians, you've promised a lot of change, haven't delivered that change, as we've discussed tonight. Isn't the best path for peace and stability in Ethiopia, for people like yourself and Abiy, who've been around for a while, to just retire from politics and let a new, untainted generation take the reins?
I can only speak for myself at this point in time. You are right about me and my colleagues to have to leave the scene and hand over to whoever is capable of understanding the situation on the ground and resolving issues without being tainted by whatever ugly past we have.
Why did you just found a new political party?
Let's just say I had to lend credibility, whatever support I have in Tigray, I need to lend that to the party. And rest assured, I will not be running for any specific office.
On that note, I will have to say, Getachew Reda, thank you so much for joining us on Head to Head tonight. Thank you to our panel of experts here, and thanks all to our audience here in London's Conway Hall. You've been watching Head to Head on Al Jazeera English. Join us again for another show very soon. Good night.